Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to talk about how we write a hypothesis. I know when we were talking about scientific method the first go around that I shook things up a bit and we said that what we had normally written as a hypothesis, maybe back in 9th grade or middle school, wasn't exactly what we consider a hypothesis in biology AP. They kind of serve the same purpose, but for our purposes, we're going to be writing them a little bit different. So we're going to learn how we're going to do that. And then we're going to learn a little bit about how we use Kami, because a lot of your assignments are going to be through PDFs and you need to learn how to work with those. So to review, a hypothesis is an explanation or a generalization of what will occur. So you're telling me what's going to happen. This is a bit like an educated guess. So there's 2 or 3 types when we're making a hypothesis. We have an explanatory one. So it's a testable, falsifiable, or I can prove it wrong statement that explains an observed phenomenon. So you need to be answering the scientific question. So if the question is, I don't know, does sunlight affect the oxygen production of plants? So my explanatory hypothesis should give me the answer to that question. So generalizing hypotheses, it describes an observed pattern in nature. So usually in nature, I cannot affect those variables to make something happen. So we could say that when the summer's hotter, we're going to have more hurricanes. I can't really make the weather hotter in order to test that experiment. I have to just look at my data and make a conclusion about what happens. So that's a generalizing hypothesis. For this class, you're going to use the explanatory ones the most often because we are going to be making our own experimental protocol. It's pretty common in AP, and you need to be able to test whatever hypothesis you write. So the third type that usually goes with our explanatory hypothesis is our null hypothesis. So it's kind of the opposite. So if our hypothesis says there is an effect, the null hypothesis says there's not an effect. So our whole purpose is to prove one or the other of those correct. Either it does or it doesn't. So when I reject my null hypothesis, that means that my hypothesis I wrote, the first one, is correct. So if plants require nutrients for growth is my hypothesis, plants not requiring them is the null hypothesis. So we're explaining, we're not necessarily guessing the outcome of our experiment. So let's look at an example because this is probably a little overwhelming. So a horticulturist or plant scientist complains to the city that a nearby residence is ruining his flowers because of the detergent being used to wash their cars. The soap runs into a stream that goes near his flower beds. As an inquiring scientist, you want to find out whether soap can affect flower growth. So one thing I want to reassure you is just because we're writing it differently and we're phrasing our hypothesis differently, it doesn't mean it doesn't really contain the same parts, because it does. We still need our variables in order to make a good hypothesis. So I want to know the effect of soap. So that's my independent variable. I'm testing the effect of soap. So I want to measure if it affects flower growth. That's the thing I'm going to measure and look for. So that's my dependent variable. So a hypothesis we can write for that is soap causes flowers to grow shorter than flowers with plain water. So you see we have our independent variable and we have our dependent variable. We even have a control thrown in there. So our null hypothesis then says the opposite, that soap will not have an effect. So these 2 hypotheses that we wrote, they're good hypotheses, and we can tell that because of 3 things. I can test it. I can run an experiment to know for sure that soap causes those flowers to grow shorter. I explained what was happening, so I gave an answer to my scientific question. And then I still use my independent and dependent variables. All right, so what I want to show you now, so we got our hypothesis, I'm going to show you how to access Kami assignments, and then we'll work a practice problem with Kami. So what Kami is going to look like for you guys, this is the Teacher PLC Google Classroom. So here's a PDF that Dr. Doty sent me. If I want to mess with this in Kami, I can right click and see it says open with Kami. So I can open it right there. Sometimes it'll bring this up, so then I can just annotate with Kami like that. So that's how it looks from Google Classroom. So I'm going to X out of that because I really don't care about our email template. We don't need it. So we're going to look at my Google Drive. I have this PDF, and I'm going to click annotate with Kami. It takes a minute, don't panic. Okay, so this brings up that PDF document that we have. And now I have all these tools that I can use to work with this document. So this markup tool right here, this is highlighter, and I like the box highlighter because I can draw a box around whatever I want to select. So let's read through this, and I can highlight the parts before I write them down. So Smithers thinks that a special juice will increase the productivity of workers. He creates 2 groups of 50 workers each and assigns each group the same task. In this case, they're supposed to staple a set of papers. Group A is given the special juice to drink while they work. Group B is not given the special juice. After an hour, Smithers counts how many stacks of papers each group has made. Group A made 1,587 stacks. Group B made 2,113 stacks. So it says to identify the control group. So if you remember from the previous presentation, a control group isn't getting whatever I'm testing. They're my standard of comparison. So let's use the purple and we'll highlight our control group. So it says group A is given the special juice, so that's not the control group. Group B is not given the special juice. So that's our control group. So then I can click the text box thing here. And so I left click and it brings up this box, and then I can resize it and drag it down. So my control group is group B that isn't given the special juice. Okay, so now we're looking for the independent variable. So that's whatever I'm testing. So we'll go back to our highlighting. I'll make that one green. So our independent variable here, that will be whatever we want to know the effect of. So this special juice, we want to know if the special juice will affect productivity. So let's go back, left click. So the special juice. So he wants a special juice will affect what? It's going to affect the productivity of workers. What color do we want? Let's do pink. So go down to text box again. Productivity of workers. Okay, so now we need a hypothesis based on this. So we have to explain what is happening, not necessarily the exact results of an experiment. So what we're seeing is that, or his hypothesis, he thinks that, so special juice will increase the productivity of workers. So that was his hypothesis right there in the beginning. So what should his conclusion be? Does he accept or reject this hypothesis? Well, to make a conclusion, remember, a good conclusion has data in it, and it's probably in CER format. Our blank is a little bit small, so that's kind of difficult to do. So we'll just try to shorten it up. So his conclusion should be, we'll just use our statement. Special juice does not increase the productivity of workers. So that means you would accept your null hypothesis here. So you would have one where it did work, one where it didn't. So it doesn't work. That's our conclusion for this experiment. How could it be improved? So to improve this experiment, we would probably want to make sure it was the special juice. There wasn't, you know, a foodborne illness or something. So we would want to control for our constants, or check our constants. So that's like, is every health of the workers? We could have more experimental groups. We could also repeat the experiment just to make sure. Okay, so that's more or less what we're looking for. So I have this Kami document. You might see up here that it says save. So mine's automatically saving. So what I can do now, if I want to share my work, I can get this Google sharing thing right here. You can copy this link and you can email it, or you can submit it in your Google Classroom assignment. So I hope this helps you understand how to write a hypothesis a little bit better. And I also hope it helps you to understand Kami a little bit better. Just work through your practice assignment and let me know if you have any questions. Take care, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.